3 people I knew or I knew remotely just passed away like very suddenly. And as cliche as it may sound, it does make you rethink about, is my approach to life is the right approach? I tell myself, look, I'm going to make a decision assuming I've only got 3 years left in my life. And if I have 3 years left in my life, what will I do now? And you see, once you have made that assumption, the priorities become so clear. I was writing my journal, and on my journal, I was thinking that, what if I just do it? Do I have to have a job to go to London? Can I just actually go and then find something there? I knew that I didn't want to have a job in banking, but I had no idea how do I apply the skill set I learned. Or I didn't even know what my skill set is. I could build spreadsheets, I handed 200 applications, over 200 applications. I got nothing. So it's my startup job was always through introductions of people I know. So my previous 3 startups were all roles they invented for me.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Shameless Careers, a podcast that helps high-achieving professionals tune into their inner voice and pursue the paths they truly want, unapologetically. As always, please like this episode to show your support for this channel. It will mean a lot to me, and I promise it will add some bonus points to your karma. Today, we'll be talking about a journey from finance to startups to entrepreneurship. Joining me is Winsie Chen. Winsie started her career in banking, where she worked for 10 years. After that, she pivoted to startup world, helping B2B startups find product market fit. And more recently, Winsie founded a company that helps parents and children systematically manage and strengthen their relationships. On top of this, Winsie is doing stand-up comedy and even did her own show in Edinburgh. So Winsie, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your start of the journey in finance. Can you tell me what attracted you to finance space in the first place? And then we'll talk about what happened afterwards.
Oh, I think attraction is a big word. I was a very good Chinese immigrant, and my mom wanted me to study accounting. And I did study accounting, but at the same time, I wanted to be creative. So finance was actually my creative career.
Right. At which point did you realize that it's not really fulfilling you to the full extent?
It was a work in progress. I think in finance, my career was also a bit atypical because I cut it into like small segments of different paths in finance. So I started in wealth management, then I moved into asset management, then I moved into capital markets and doing equity research. So for me, it was more, even at that process, was a figuring out process. It was like, when I was in wealth management, you are actually in the distribution channel. And at the time I was learning what finance is all about. And I thought, okay, actually, now I've seen the product, I want to see how the product is made. So I just moved, I would say, kind of up the value chain to asset management. And then I worked for a couple of years ago. Okay, now I've seen how the product is made, but I want to know how it was really made. So move further up to equity research. And once you're there, you go like, okay, there's no... In terms of you think about the sausage machine, I felt like I was at the start of the sausage machine and you can't move ever further. And then that was when I figured out, I've kind of experienced the entire sausage machine. And then it still doesn't feel like I want to stick in one part of this machine for the rest of my career. And that was when I figured probably this is not going to be my industry.
And what was missing now that you look back on it? Why, after even exploring this whole value chain, it still felt like not enough? How do you think about it now?
Just don't get me wrong, because I liked, at least intellectually, I liked a lot of what I was doing when I was in finance. I wouldn't say all of it, and goodness, no, it was not. But I liked a lot because I felt it was a intellectually stimulating job. It was just not intellectually rewarding. And at the time, I also didn't really know what was missing. But what I felt was I actually did not know what is the actual, impact of the work. And especially finance itself is a derivative market. And what you build or your role contributes to a tiny little bit of the final impact of the market. And you don't even know which tiny little bit it impacts. There's a lot of movements are influenced by just external events, like macro events, events that are completely out of control. So when I was, for instance, as an equity analyst, and I was like, did the CFA, and the CFA was just telling you that, just 80% of market movement is influenced by external factors. And then I'm like, then why do I sit like 16 hours in the office and doing spreadsheets, So if my contribution only contributes to so tiny part, less than 20% of the eventual impact, it doesn't, like the drive is not very clear, like, then why I'm doing this. I think the other thing was like when I was doing equity research, you do this earnings calls, right? And then I just think it was such an irony because I was in my late 20s and you walk into the boardroom and interrogating CEOs and CFOs with like 35 years of experience managing like a large corporate. And then you are supposed to kind of advise them how to manage their company so their stock market, their stock goes well. And I always felt a little bit of irony in it, And I felt, okay, what if I can put myself on the other side of the seat to actually, manage the company? And that's when kind of all the cards are falling together, thinking, okay, maybe I should switch to something else and try something different.
So what did you do next?
I always liked London. At the time I was living in Singapore, I always liked London. And it was impossible to move over. Because I had a Chinese passport. It was just, whole visa situation is very hard to move over to the UK. Just on a plug, thanks to Brexit, actually it became a lot easier for people like me. So there were a few years I was kind of thinking, I want to leave Singapore, leave finance, move to London, but I just couldn't really find the job offer because I didn't know anyone here, and it just doesn't seem to be a transition. And then there was, I remember this was in 2017. I was flying back to China, to Xi'an, to meet my mom for a trip that we organized. Like we kind of have an annual trip in China. And I was taking the flight to Xi'an, and I was writing my journal. And on my journal, I was thinking that, what if I just do it? Can I do it? Do I have to have a job to go to London? Can I just actually go and then find something there? I'll just do it. That was like the start of the trip when I was writing the journal. And during that trip, I was thinking about this. And on the way back, I was like fully determined. I was like, okay, let's just do it. So I came back, I booked my tickets to a trip in Europe. So I pinned down a few cities. I thought, okay, I need to go to London, Geneva, Zurich, the few cities that I might be able to find job opportunities. I bought the tickets. That was in September. I bought a ticket in November. And then I thought, okay, let's do this one round to see if I find something. If not, I come back again in January. I did my first trip. And then I actually figured out a way to come here with someone who partnered with me. And then I just brought myself over.
And what did your parents and your friends say when obviously you made such a risky move of leaving your job, moving countries, hoping to find something in a totally different country?
With my friends, it was a different conversation. They actually knew, all the immigration situation, how hard it is to come to Europe. My friends were just saying it's not worth the effort. A lot of friends was telling me it's not worth the effort. It's like, first you set back your career. It's very hard to find a job without a visa. Just don't do it. If you want to do it, maybe do it in a safe way. And the safe way is like, why don't you come and do an MBA first? Right? So you build that transition bridge for yourself. Or maybe you join a larger company in Asia who has an office in London, and you work there first for 2-3 years and then you'll come over. So there's always like, they want to, which I understand is like their advice to me is to paint this, you need a bridge. Yep. You just can't flip one chapter to another. Like you need to build this bridge. My parents was different. To convince them was a completely different reason. It was actually quite funny. I told my parents that, look, I'm gonna find a man in London. It was a completely different story that I sold to my parents. I said, look, I lived in Singapore. I'm still single, and I need to change to it because I've exploited all options in Singapore. It's a small country, okay? So if you want me to get married, I need to move somewhere else, okay? And then I'm gonna go to London because it's an international city. There will be more possibilities. And give me 2 years, and then I'm gonna find you like my husband for you, okay? So that's how I sold to my parents.
Honestly, that's the most creative way I've ever heard on the podcast of people selling a big risky career change in such a neat and creative way. That's amazing.
Yeah, to Chinese parents, that's the only way it works, I mean, even my dad was supporting me. And my dad was like, how long this husband hunting journey is going to be? I'm just like, 2 years. Give me 2 years, okay? I'm going to deliver. I didn't, by the way. So, but it's too late. So now I'm here.
And let's talk about your friend's argument. Obviously, like giving up the career trajectory. How did you think about all of these trade-offs? Because obviously now you're thinking about it and speaking about it in a such light-hearted way. But did you feel any doubt or any big trade-offs that were in your mind that you had to battle with?
Yes, there was. I think, especially being like a Chinese immigrant, I was just always taught and also really believed to be a very responsible person. So you need to really think about maybe 3 steps ahead before you take the first step. So for my career decisions had always been the case. Even like moving to Singapore was a more calculated path than the London was like more a parachuting path decision. The debate, for instance, I was thinking, well, but I put so much effort in building my banking career, right? So I had 2-3 years that had almost no social life, was doing my CFA. And then now I got a CFA. I got permanent residency in Singapore, and then I got a pretty well-paid job, and I got network in my industry. So it's like, and also the career path, the career growth was very clear. Mm-hmm. And I was also beating myself up. I was like, okay, you worked all the years to get to this stage. Yeah. That you have security from the job, you have security like money-wise, social-wise, you have your stable friends, because for any international cities, for instance, people like move in and out. So only after a certain period of time, you actually have friends who actually stick with you. So you had a social network, you have professional network, and then you have like your credentials and all the things. And then now you go like, actually, I want to put that behind me. So it was hard. And I think that also explained for a few years I was struggling about, okay, I need to find the next perfect opportunity. So I justified this move. In 2017, before I moved over, I think I just took the approach very differently. A few significant events happened that year. 3 people I knew remotely just passed away like very suddenly. And as cliche as it may sound, it does make you rethink about, is my approach to life is the right approach? And because of that, I adjusted approach, and I tell myself, look, I'm going to make a decision, assuming I've only got 3 years left in my life. 3 years. And if I have 3 years left in my life, what will I do now? And you see, once you have made that assumption, the priorities become so clear. Like all the baggage you thought you had, or all the assets you thought you had, was just so much lighter. You don't have them anymore. Because I just want to make the most of it, or test the theories that never I had the bravery of testing it out, because the time is limited. Then it was very clear, like all the worries I had, about my career, my network, and professional credentials at all, it actually didn't really matter. Because this does not bring the life I wanted to live in the next 3 years. And what I need to do is actually need to go on quickly figure out how I want to live in the next 3 years. And that just became a lot lighter. And once you realize that, it was a very light decision. It was just like, actually, I had nothing to lose, because if I wait, the opportunity cost is greater, because I don't want to live the next 3 years, especially if that's my only 3 years left. I don't want to live the way I was living at the moment. So then the only answer is to change.
And apart from moving to London, were there any other hypotheses that you had about how you want to spend the 3 years? Did you know something, there's some areas that you wanted to explore already at this stage, or were you completely open-minded and didn't know at all what you could do next?
Completely open-minded in terms of career-wise. I knew that I didn't want to have a job in banking, but I had no idea how do I apply the skill set I learned. Or I didn't even know what my skill set is. I could build spreadsheets, It's like I didn't know what the skill sets it was outside the context of banking, because that's the only world I know. I knew. So no idea. Career-wise, I have no idea. I mean, like lifestyle-wise, I always liked theater. So, I mean, London is a bustling hub for just creative productions. There are so many theater works going on. And that is something I felt. So at the time I felt, okay, at least I'm in the city. I'm closer to the scene. And maybe one day when I made it, I could also be part of it. I can produce my own theater, So that was like a little of like a remote kind of sense of how I relate myself to the city. But that was as clear as that. It was very little definition of what's this transition is going to be.
And how did you figure it out? So you got parachuted to London. How did you find what you want to do?
I got parachuted in London, and I was working with a company who I was helping them to launch their product in Europe. And that was the process of figuring out. It took about a year, and then COVID happened, lockdown. So I'm like, hey, I didn't expect this. This has really disrupted my 3-year plan because, suddenly my life was put on hold. But I kind of just during the process, because at the beginning when I was working with a couple of startups, I was still trying to think about very much like inside the box. Okay, so I can build a good spreadsheet. I can help you to build a financial model for your company. I'm very good at storytelling, sensing businesses. So because I was an equity analyst, I was writing stories all the time. So I'll go like, okay, maybe I can help you with your narrative for your company. Now, if I can do numbers, I can do narratives, maybe I can help you with your fundraise. Mm-hmm. So that was like at the very beginning, I thought, okay, let's just try this first. And while I was trying that, I figured actually I'm not only good at writing stories, I'm actually quite good at building stories. And you can put this in the context of just building a company. If you could envision what, the end result looks like, let it be a team or let it be a product, or let it be the market or let it be the user experience. And you kind of just work backwards of, okay, if now I don't have chapter, I'm on my chapter 0, I'm on chapter 1, but how the story you want it to end, then you kind of just start writing. And I'm going to actually, you know what? I'm pretty good at building companies. I'm good at building products. I'm good at building teams because I'm good at connecting dots together and then seeing the narrative grow. So if I know where I want to drive the narrative, then I can actually be part of building the narrative. So that kind of shifted me going okay, instead of just selling the end story, I could come back and build the story. And I became like a startup a generalist, working in early stage startups, mainly on I would say product and strategy. But it's really that just putting things together. Identifying the problem, figuring out how do you build a product, figuring out how do you go to market. Then you think about then how to hire the team for people to deliver the strategy, and you put this together. And that's called a company. So that's a business.
So you have figured it out that you're really good at it. And what was your process of selling this to startups, especially at the beginning, when you only had like classic finance experience? Were startups receptive to your pitch, and or were you, for example, were they receptive only in like fintech, or if they're fintech startups that are most relevant to your prior experience? Like, what was it like for you?
No, it's a good question. I would say that I wouldn't call I figured out, or the figuring out experience, it was a process. So I think I was clearer and clearer at what I was good at doing. So I mean, now, because I've been working with startups for close to 8 years now, and I can say that, okay, I'm in just so much clarity now of what value I can bring, but this is not an overnight realization. It's a work in progress. So every month, every year, I figure out a little bit more than the previous month or year. So, and that comes back to, your question is like, okay, first is what value I can bring, how much confidence I have, because this is, for a long time, it's not been tested. And then how do you sell this to, your potential buyer or your potential employer? I want to thank two people in this journey. One guy is an investor I know professionally in Singapore. And during my darkest time, like during lockdown, I thought, okay, now I have all the time in my hands. Maybe I should pick up a new skill so I can work properly in tech companies. So I took up a coding program where you can learn online. It's by Harvard. It's called CS50. So basically, you start from really the scratch, and they teach you computational thinking, and then teach you coding, teach you different languages, and then eventually you kind of go there. I was like, okay, now after lockdown, I can do engineer, basically I can code, because to me it's like between missing me and going to tech is missing the technical skills is coding. So I was taking that course. I was actually enjoying it as well. And I finished the first course and I'm thinking about, okay, now I need to do the second course. Then I had a call with this guy I know who is a venture investor in Singapore, and just like asking him, because he invests in tech startups, and I was asking him, now I've learned a bit of coding. I know I will not be a coder, but then I think I'm more ready to add my value to startups. And he just told me that, look, you go to a startup, everyone is an engineer, or like most of the people there is an engineer. You don't need to code there. So you need to think about how do you differentiate yourself. Like if you want to compete with them, become a better programmer, you will not. So why don't you think about, you should bring the value that they do not have. Think about the value that you learn in banking, and how do you apply that they do not have. And I was like, okay, actually that is right, because now I only needed to understand the logic of computer programs. But it doesn't mean that I need to be able to do it or be good at it. But I need to basically figure out what I'm good at. So that's kind of really helped me to switch my thinking on, okay, now I need to look at a company to see what is missing in their skill set. And can I bring that missing skill set rather than just keeping enhancing on something they already have. So that's number one. And then basically, so I didn't do the second course. I was like, okay, the first course is enough. Now I need to think about, okay, these are the target companies I wanted to join. And then what will be possibly the missing skill set they have. Yeah. And then, okay, I'll say with my background, where can I fill the gaps of their missing skill set? The other person I want to thank is...
And before we go there, so how did you formulate it to them? Because we're still talking about your finance experience versus startup experience. So how did you figure out how to formulate and bring your past experience into the new world?
I think just like looking back, my pretty fragmented career path in banking became really helpful, because because I didn't get specialized in one vertical in banking, rather every 2-3 years I switched to a different area in banking. I understand the whole commercialization of an idea pretty well. I understand how the system runs pretty well. I understand how organizations runs pretty well. I started with at the bottom of the value chain, and I'm not saying this by hierarchy, but it's more like just how a product is produced from the beginning to the end. So I started from distribution, and then I moved all the way to where the ideas were generated. And because of that, you kind of in every segment you interact in distribution, you interact with clients. And different kind of buyers, and then you're kind of in the middle. Asset management. You have like basically one end you have institutional money, and then the end you go to institutional investors, or maybe you have like retail investors, and then you move to the capital markets. Then you start dealing with corporates. You start dealing with capital markets a lot more. So because of that experience, it really helped me, and I wanted to say, actually helped me to connect the dots. You start to think about when you capture one signal, it's no longer where that signal, why that signal is relevant to your little vertical that you work in, but how is that signal relevant to the entire value chain? And that actually really helped me with early stage startups. It's like, okay, this is something you think that's the problem, and this is something you want to build as a solution. How do you? And then the path is messy. There's no path. There's all dots in between.
Yeah.
How do I actually find dots to say, okay, so I can make A links to B to links to C, and eventually you can get there. And this, in terms of just like the logical thinking, hypothesis testing, but also understanding how organizations make decisions, again, because I always worked in B2B startups before, really helped me to figure out and connecting the dots. And I would say, frankly, most people working in startups didn't have the corporate experience like the way I had it. Most people, even they had a corporate experience, they tend to be in one department, in one vertical.
Yeah.
And I just was able to bring this helicopter view of, okay, actually I can stitch the dots together like a lot faster and more sensitive than most people. And I think that was just a tremendous skill that I bring into company in early stages.
And was it important how you call this role, or in startups it's super flexible? Like, for example, which type of roles did you apply to with this skill that you had?
I applied, but I handed 200 applications, over 200 applications. I got nothing. So it's my startup job was always through introductions of people I know.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a different, yes. So, and the reason actually answers your question pretty well, I think, is just when hiring managers want to box you into a certain skill set, it's very hard for me to fit that in. And so pitching myself of a role that already exists is very hard. So my previous 3 startups were all roles they actually they invented for me. Yeah. So I'm just going like, okay, you have a bit of gap around here, and that here you sum up all the gaps together. That's gonna be my role.
Yeah. And before we move to the second person, because he's been waiting.
Yes, he's been waiting.
One more question on that. Obviously, you have been speaking about mainly early stage startups, but did you consider later stage startups, and how did you think about that?
I've never considered later stage. I'm still quite excited. In my journey, even now, I'm founding my own company, and I'm also advising some startup founders, and it's always in early stage. I like this experience from creating something from nothing. It's a very exciting part. But just don't get me wrong, you get so much frustrations because of the lack of structure, lack of order. You kind of constantly fighting fire. This something. It doesn't give me adrenaline all the time. I promise you. But by and all, I still enjoy the process of creating something from nothing. Yeah. Amazing. Which, oh my God, as you speak about everything, I see so many parallels between like you writing and being a creative person. We'll move to the stand-up part later. And the fact that you enjoy early stage startups, all of this is ultimately creativity. It's just different like aspects of it. But anyway, this existential and philosophical thoughts aside, the second person. The second person is really answer about industries, right? Because you were talking about, well, I was in banking, and then specifically I was in real estate. So do I have to think about, I need to do fintech, I need to do real estate? that this is that more natural. Yes and no. So a caveat is my latest startup that I left in January is a fintech company. So, and it's actually in real estate. It's a product that helps real estate institutional investors. But that was the last startup I worked with. Previously, I worked with startups in transportations, logistics, and then pharmaceutical, which was really odd one out. And that's where the second person I want to thank to. It's also someone I know who's a venture capital investor, and he introduced me to this health tech company. I went to meet the founder. Again, same thing, kind of have understanding the organization, the product, kind of the skill set. And that was the first time I was in the conversation, I was just going like this, I can't do this because it's pharmaceutical. I'm a good storyteller, but hey, I'm pharmaceutical. That's like you're talking about drugs, this is a real thing. I know nothing. I mean, like all your words has more than 5 syllables. I can't even pronounce them, So, I was just like, no, I can't do this. So towards the end of the conversation, I really just chickened out. I was like, okay, no, I can't do this. So the conversation basically went like this. She was going like, yes. And I was going like, no. She was like, yes. I was like, no. So, and I went back, I called this, the VC friend. And I said, why did you introduce me to a pharmaceutical, product? I knew nothing about pharma. So, and he said something. I was just like, it's so refreshing. And I still remind myself nowadays, every now and then. He said, what's the big deal with pharma? You make a pill and you sell it. And I was like, this is it. This is it, right? Of course. What you make a pill and sell it. So I went for it, Yeah. And it turned out it was a great move because like the founder said, it was like, okay, everyone in my company knows about pharmaceutical, so I don't need that skill set. We're looking for people who are good at commercialization, So I was like, okay, so I joined.
Now that you have seen a career path in big institutionalized finance world and in the startup world, can you compare and contrast these two types of careers? What does career progression look like in both, and how do they differ?
There are very different career paths. And again, I'm not selling the startup idea to everyone. I don't think it's definitely not for everyone. So people need to understand your style of working, your risk tolerance. In the corporate world, there's a clear career ladder. You climb the ladder, you know exactly who's the person ahead of you, 2 steps ahead, 5 steps ahead, and then what is the MD looks like or the CEO of the company looks like. In startup, there's no such a thing. You, instead of growing and climbing that career ladder, I would say that you stay pretty much at that role and then grow the company. And then your role become bigger, not because you climb up a ladder, but because the company has grown. So it's a very different experience. Well, if the company doesn't grow, unlikely your role is going to grow in any substantial way. You're probably going to grow in the first couple of years, and it will basically just stay there. So picking the right team to work with, or growing with the company, picking the company that can grow with you is a lot more important. Because there's no set career path.
Right. And this is where, again, network is very important, and the ability, like networking with VCs, having your own views about the company growth, doing your own analysis about the industry, the company, having a buy-in and having a view on how good the team is, all of this becomes part of the equation as you assess the company that you join, right?
Yeah, 100%. You'll have a very good grip of how the company is doing, what the problem the company is solving. And this one, it doesn't matter if you are just you're a software engineer, you are doing HR, you're whatever area you're working in a company, have a good grip of the problem the company is trying to tackle. Apply your own judgment if they are doing the way you think it makes sense, and look at the competitors, but also look at the rest of the industry. Look at outside of in other industries, how other companies grow. And do you think this company is going to grow to give you a satisfying career path? This is a question you have to constantly ask yourself.
And how do the two paths compare in terms of compensation trajectory?
I'll say if you're in your early career, just don't even think about trade-offs. I mean, you have invested very little in your early career, and if you really again, I'm talking to the people who actually want to try startups. Don't think about financial trade-offs. That I don't know, 10K, 20K, 50K, it really makes no difference. Just it's not gonna make a change your life. So don't think about that. If you're kind of mid-career, that becomes more substantial. You are talking about real pay cuts.
Yeah.
Often, maybe in some individual cases it doesn't happen, but often you're talking about pay cuts in cash sense, in the short-term cash value, you're talking about pay cuts. Then you need to ask yourself, number one is, do I see greater growth potential in the future? Because usually if you're joined in kind of a mid-tier or a senior position in a startup, you do get equity or you get stock options in a company. So that's like the growth potential you can get over there. And second is that you also need to know how much is the real financial trade-off, because you can't just compare salary to salary. First, there's growth potential in the future, right? And second is what's behind that, because first you have to think about take-home pay. And I always tell people, think about the pay after tax. Don't think about pay before tax. Think about how much you can end up after a year after taking everything on top of it. How big is that differential? And then you ask yourself, does that make a change? How substantial does that make a change to my lifestyle? And if it doesn't, then don't think about it. If it does, then you're going is it worth the risk I'm taking on the potential hypergrowth I can take in the company? Is it worth the risk I'm taking of having a different lifestyle, which could potentially make me feel more satisfied about my career? These are the questions you need to figure out.
Yeah. And moving on to your venture right now.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the business idea? And tell me more about that.
The company I'm building now is called Our Way. It's a hybrid product that comes in the form of a digital product and a physical board that sits in a family and the family can interact with. And the product is to help parent-child manage and improve their relationships. I can talk about this for the next 2 hours, but how do I come up with this idea? So in the short form is last year was a pretty important year for me in the way that I was actually emotionally struggling with sticking to the idea of working with the startup. And it's not just because the startup I worked with, I actually hardly of that because of that particular case, but it's more about just thinking about all the years I worked with institutions and with B2B products. And I think I've grown to the stage where I became more emotionally detached with the ideas I was working on, with the business I was working with. And I wanted to have something that I feel more connected with the company I worked on. And I didn't really have the idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But in parallel, I've been working with my relationship with my parents for a very long time. And we had some major breakthroughs last year. Like, I could confidently say that I'm like in the closest, connection with my parents over the last 30 years, where we are now. And that's a big statement. And because I'm a commercial person, I'm like, hey, is it my very unique lived experience, or is it something that is quite universal, the problem? And I can standardize my experience into something that actually can help more people. And that's when I start structuring the idea, thinking about doing a lot of research. And I found a lot of research backed on, introducing ratios, structures, small repeatable actions to help family to bond together. So instead of doing therapy, which I have nothing against, I've been seeing a therapist myself. But at the same time, it's how do we focus on the actions to make people change? And how do we focus on action is on, instead of making big targets, is making the small, repeatable moves that people can adhere to. And this is basically I'm building. I'm just helping parents and child. And this applies to both parents with young children, but also like people like us with our aging parents, is can we actually start doing something differently for that's action-oriented for our relationship to move to a tighter, to a more close, connected way. That's what I'm building.
Right. And the final question from my side, obviously I've mentioned in the introduction that you also do stand-up comedy,
Yes.
right? Which again brings the conversation back to your creative side. Can you tell me what role has stand-up played in your life? And I know that it has direct link to your risk-taking, to the path around searching fulfillment that we talked about. So tell me more about that.
Stand-up, yeah. So I started doing stand-up about maybe 2.5 years ago. And this is really back on me thinking of when I moved to London. I always liked theater, for instance. I was like an actress when I was a little kid, you know. It never took me too far, you know. But so there was like kind of always a bit in me. And in my mind, when I moved to London, I was thinking about one day when I made it, I'm going to be on the stage. But I need to make it first. And just really throughout this whole journey of building startups, and then especially after lockdown, and I just feel like maybe I will never make it. You know, what if I never make it? You know? So I would just do it. You know, just close your eyes and do it. And what do you get to lose? If you don't do it well, you can stop doing it. But at least I need to start. So that's basically, I put myself on stage. I didn't take any course. I booked a gig and I just shoot myself there. And then after that, I start doing gig after gig. And I was like, actually, I really enjoy it. And this when I put up a show in Edinburgh last year. But coming back to like kind of professionally, it just helped me so much. I think without doing stand-up, I would not have this lightness in me of going that I could just do it and fail and it's okay. You know, and that's why I've been advocating people that working in startup going like, everyone should try stand-up, you know? I know like Varia, you did it as well, right? So it's having that repeated experience helps you to understand you are not afraid of failure and rejection because everything is just a test. And you test the idea. If it works, go keep ahead, make it better. If it doesn't, then try it again. And this is the basic expectations in stand-up. And when you have that mindset, apply it to building your own company, you just feel so much. Your decisions are so much lighter. You can be rejected, you can fail. It's just part of the process.